October 23rd, 2021, Donington Park, UK. It is the final weekend of the Britcar Endurance Championship season. The field of Britain's top endurance series is comprised of pro and amateur drivers alike. The pro drivers have had thousands of hours of seat time behind the wheel, and the amateurs have enough money to get behind the wheel themselves. But one driver in this field does not fit either of these molds, and he is standing anxiously on the pit wall, waiting for his teammate to cross the final corner. But as this familiar face begins to prepare himself for the podium, he can't help but think how impossible this journey was. How someone like him, with his background, would even end up on the track at race day, let alone victory lane. And this is the story of that journey. This is the story of Jimmy Broadbent. Over the 12 years that Jimmy Broadbent has been posting videos to YouTube, he has become synonymous with sim racing YouTube as a whole. Many have come to know Jimmy through his infectious positive attitude towards sim racing and the various memes that his community produces. And with those factors and more, Jimmy has become the first YouTuber in the sim racing space to approach 1 million subscribers. And though Jimmy is an open book, many of his loyal followers don't even know how compelling the origin story of Jimmy Broadbent really is.
My name is Jimmy Broadbent. My first proper sim rig I got in 2012, but I've had a wheel on a desk since 1998. And I'm from the UK. I was a PlayStation man forever. I played every Gran Turismo religiously. I did buy an Xbox and try Forza, but it weren't for me in the same way Gran Turismo was. And I got to the point where I started racing online. GT Online back then was a bit of a Wild West. You know, you don't know if you're going to have a great race or be just shunted by every car in the field every corner for 10 laps. When I found that people were doing this properly outside of the console and PC, it was just another reason for me to go and make that, what at the time was a very significant investment.
The growth of sim racing has always been hampered by the price of equipment and software. Entry-level wheels were even more expensive back in the early 2010s than they are today, which means that with someone like Jimmy's background, they had to really commit to get into sim racing.
There was no money at all in our family for anything like that. I mean, yeah, for a lot of my childhood, it was just me and my brothers and my mum, so the income was very low. I worked in a horrible insurance company job. Basically, it was my job to convince you to buy stuff you didn't need. That was my job, and I hated that. But I did it anyway, and it allowed me to have a wage, which then allowed me to go and buy my first sim rig, which was my first proper one with a PC setup. It was some pre-built HP PC, which was pretty terrible, alongside a G27, a play seat, and the little shifter that comes with a G27. And it was awesome. It worked well for what I wanted to do. But I remember sort of logging on to YouTube and seeing someone driving an R-Factor mod with a V12 1990 Ferrari. And the sound of it was I was like, oh my god, it sounds kind of like it should. And for me, I'm a massive audiophile when it comes to racing. I love that stuff. It's the feeling of a car going by you is the coolest thing ever. And I felt that for the first time in a video game with R-Factor. So yeah, bought the rig and then just started discovering things for myself.
Shortly after Jimmy began sim racing on R-Factor, he decided to begin documenting his journey on YouTube. For the first year, he would just post clips of him racing in R-Factor to little fanfare. But that all changed the day that Jimmy decided to try a new racing simulator.
I remember my first 1,000 view video, and it was like Let's Play iRacing, part 1, you know, and I was sort of going to document my career and walk through it as a rookie, because I back then I was convinced I was the best driver in the world, as anyone is, I think, who comes from Gran Turismo and wins a few races. It's like, cool, I'm going to just, do I'll be a pro driver, I'll start my career here. And I remember getting 1,000 views and thinking, man, I've made it. And I took a screenshot of it. I think it still exists somewhere, on my Facebook profile, me showing off to the 2 or 3 people that cared at the time. that was an amazing feeling to have people that I knew were outside of my sort of friendship group or my family watching my videos and commenting and enjoying it. And back when YouTube showed you the likes and dislikes, I used to always count the likes and dislikes and make sure that everyone liked it. If it didn't, I'd be like, oh, why didn't you like it? What can I do better? Even like one dislike would drive me insane, which luckily I got rid of that habit.
As Jimmy began to garner an audience through iRacing, it wasn't all smooth sailing.
I also remember another video with the opposite effect where I did a remember Project Cars, the first one. I was a backer for that, and their first, like, one of their alphas or betas or whatever it was came out, and I tried it, and I was like, it's not great, it's not what I was expecting, but hey, it's good that it's going in the right direction. And that video got like 20,000 views because it was posted on the Slightly Mad forums. People were just ripping the shit out of me, like, personally, and like going through my channel and like disliking other videos and stuff like that because I didn't like the video game they liked. So yeah, that was about 2 years after that first memory, but it's interesting the highs and lows of early YouTube.
But nevertheless, Jimmy was happy posting videos to YouTube. But even in an era where video game Let's Plays ruled YouTube, sim racing did not get that much attention.
Like, the sim racing space back then was like really, really small. There were like maybe 2 or 3 big presences there. One of those I'd say is one of my favorite channels I ever watched was Empty Box. Come back soon, Matt. I got to see some more like grumpy Corvette racing, man. I love that shit. I just didn't really trust anyone's opinion, you know, because I always used to think to myself, well, no one's a racing driver. How do they know? And I'm not a racing driver either, but like my opinions on things are based on, right, okay, let's go watch an onboard, let's go watch the car from an exterior camera and see how it reacts. As I put more and more videos out and the sort of sub count started to go up a little bit, I thought, well, you know what? No one else is doing it. Maybe I should do it. It would be questions that I would like ask myself about, like, oh, you know, for example, when Dirt Rally came out, the first one, like, it came out of nowhere, unannounced, just thrown out into the wild. And I thought, oh my god, this is amazing. So I thought I went into it, tried it, loved it, and gave my like visceral first impression of it. Under everything, I'm just a massive motorsport fan.
Jimmy's rise within the sim racing sphere was slow but steady at first, with 5,000 YouTube subscribers in 2015 and reaching 10,000 YouTube subscribers in 2017. But did Jimmy see this YouTube thing as a potential career?
Career would be incorrect in the way that I wasn't looking to make money from it at that time. And I think hobby suggests that maybe I wasn't taking it kind of seriously, but like towards, you know, the end of 2016 going into 2017, I was really trying to treat it like almost like a job, but mainly just to keep myself occupied, keep my brain busy, because I wasn't doing so well at that point mentally. So I just sort of decided that, well, I have the choice of either sort of sitting around all day and doing nothing and staring at the ceiling, which, you know, sometimes that happened anyway, or you can do something productive with your time. And it was very important for me to feel like I was being productive. Halfway through like one of the Gran Turismo streams, where it occurred to me that like I was starting to make like the same money that I was making at a part-time job I had stacking shelves at night in the supermarket. I was like, hey, this is better than that. Like, and it's more fun, and I enjoy it, and I can do it every day, and I don't care about doing it every day. And I think that's when it started to become a bit more something that supported me. But until then, it was just a way to keep the older grey matter busy.
The real tipping point with Jimmy's channel, like mentioned before, was his streams, where he would drive video games such as Gran Turismo and sim racing games such as iRacing in front of thousands of people in his now iconic shed.
So I was at university. I took out a student loan to go and study photography. Well, what a mistake that was! But hey, you can't tell that to your past self, I guess. But around the end of that time, it's when like I had sort of my first big, I guess, episode. We'll just call it for now. So I kind of did what a lot of people do after university now, and just go back home because there's no other option for you. And I was in my childhood room, you know, and I was like, I can't stand this. My mum, bless her, who was like brilliant during this time, she said, well, listen, like we've got this the shed down the bottom of the garden. It's insulated. Do you want to go in there? And I was like, yeah, okay. And for me, it gave me enough space to feel like I wasn't regressed so much that it's interesting what that does to your brain. But I also was close enough that if something happened, and it did a couple of times, then I could be reached. So that was set up down the bottom of the garden, literally. I was next to the chickens. We used to keep chickens, and like I think woken up every morning by that fucking rooster. But I kind of miss it in some weird way, but in a much bigger way, I don't miss it. What I didn't sort of plan or realise is that basically gave me my own sort of living recording studio, where I wouldn't be bothered at all. I had my own internet separate of the house down there. I could just get on with stuff, and I did that.
And then in just the span of 1 year, Jimmy's channel goes from 10,000 subscribers to 50 to 70 to 100,000 subscribers.
I remember a lot of it was because I was streaming Gran Turismo. I streamed GT2. Like the first stream had like 400 or 500 people watching. I was like, oh my god, that's loads. Like that's amazing. And then I got GT3, and I think the first stream had like 2.2 or 2.4k max concurrent, which again is for a channel like that was around just under 10k, around 10k at the time, was just unreal. And it just sort of kept going from there. I kept streaming, and the streams kept bringing in more and more subscribers. So it was a super popular stream series. And alongside that, I started to post more sort of sim videos. I was really worried that people would think of my channel as like not being sim based anymore, despite all the racing I did there. But I think streaming on YouTube was like the thing that really helped move it along. It just sort of kept moving and moving. And I remember the video and the time where I overtook Empty Box on subscribers, and I thought, oh my god, Empty Box has been like the guy. He is the guy. That can't be right. This guy's far better than I am, far like more entertaining to me than I perceive myself being. That, yeah, you step back and go, oh my god, Christ, this is actually becoming something,
But what allowed Jimmy Broadbent to outgrow all of his contemporaries in such a quick time frame?
Well, it definitely wasn't playing the game at a high level. I don't think it's ever been the case for any of my content. I streamed, and when I spoke to people in the streams, I would always speak to them as if they were my friends. I do it now, I think anyone who comes by and spends that evening with me, playing video games or watching or just being a part of the hive mind that is a live stream chat, I think like it's like being at a bar, and the guy sitting next to you, sort of strike up conversation. The stream would always be a place where you can talk friendly with people and talk openly, and you wouldn't be judged.
And then finally, after all the support, the time came for Jimmy to take the plunge into full-time sim racing YouTube.
It wasn't scary because I didn't really care if I failed or not. Like, to be dramatic, of like, I don't care if I fail, I'll just fucking go live on the street or something, Like, I didn't really care about myself back then very much. I know I talk a bit like dramatically about maybe how I felt or what was going through my brain at the time, but I was helped immensely by close friends and family who would say, you know what, you are doing something good here. Like, we can see it's going well for you. You got to just keep going at it and like don't put any pressure on yourself. So I didn't. So I just took the plunge and didn't think about it.
And going into 2018, Jimmy finally allowed himself to think about a dream that he had had since he was a kid.
I had an MX-5. It was this old beat-up thing at the time. It's crazy to think it's now like this ridiculous race car, but at the time it didn't run and like it was rusty and all this stuff. And I remember saying on stream, like, if you want, we can try and get it going, build it up, and I can do videos about it. And everyone seemed pretty positive in like the stream chat. So I thought, okay, well, I'll just do it. And then I thought, well, okay, maybe I should record like some before and after videos. And I guess it just started from there. It was just, right, okay, I've got my phone. What if I tape it to the dash and hit record? It was that sort of thing.
Because up until this point, even with all of his sim racing experience, Jimmy had never even set foot in a rental cart before, let alone a real race car.
So my first time in like a rental cart was, I think 2018 at Buckmore Park, and it was like the Buckmore 24. It was my first ever race, and it was raining and I went out on slicks and I spun like 5 or 6 times in the first lap. And I thought, I can't do it. I'm not cut out for this. It was a big, big realization that it's different a bit from the sim.
So while Jimmy's first racing experience was humbling, he also wasn't taking anything for granted.
To have those opportunities was amazing, but I didn't think there would be more.
And then, out of nowhere, Jimmy's first real opportunity in 2019.
Yeah, Club 100 with Steve. What an experience that was. Club 100 at the time that we would produce content in exchange for entry. But if we hadn't done that, it would have been several £1,000s for the season. And not everyone has that sort of money just to throw at something. So I really enjoyed doing it, and I really wanted to do more of it. But noticing with the karting stuff that people were less and less interested as time went on, that it was kind of hard to justify taking that time away. It isn't just doing the race, it's making sure you're sleeping well the night before, making sure you're at the event on time in the morning, and then you get back in the evening. You sort of lose a day and a half from that.
Club 100 was a trial by fire for Jimmy, and while he was improving in speed, he was still not seeing the results that he wanted, but that wasn't even the thing that he worried most about.
Honestly, at that point, I was super, in the numbers, 100%, because you think to yourself, hey, I think I'm doing a better job than I was, and I am making content in a bit of a more structured and more efficient way, and it looks nicer. Why don't people like it? Do people not like me, And you have these weird selfish thoughts like that, where it's about you, and it took me genuinely up until about 2 or 3 years ago to get out of that mindset. If a video didn't do well, it would ruin my day. It would ruin my evening. And I'd be like, oh, what's the point? No one cares anymore. And then I would get over it. No, you're being dramatic, Jimmy. And nowadays, I think to myself, hey, I'll just make what I want to make. And if people watch it, then great. And if they don't, then, well, I'll make something else. Someone said something to me that was it really sat with me. Is that the audience doesn't owe you anything. In the same way as you don't owe the audience anything, really. You put up the content that you want to put up, and now watch it if they want to watch it. Just because you want to do something, if it's very different from stuff you've done in the past, doesn't mean that people are going to watch it, and there's no obligation for them to watch it. Of course there isn't. And that sounds quite simple when you say it out loud, but sometimes you get into a way of thinking where that doesn't exist, that mentality is not available to you. If I had one bit of advice for anyone doing YouTube, is that just don't look at the numbers so much. A number on a website shouldn't dictate how you feel about your day and your life. There are much more important things in life.
In 2020, the world went into lockdown, and one of the things that came with that was an explosion of popularity with sim racing. And one of the names at the top of the list of people to have on your sim racing event was Jimmy Broadbent.
During COVID, during the lockdown, myself and Steve, we got invited to a million different sim events because every manufacturer is just scrambling for something to keep them relevant. Every race series doing the same thing, and a lot of drivers in series didn't have rigs or didn't really care about sim racing, so they've got to fill those spots, right? Before I know it, I'm on the grid doing these virtual F1 Grand Prix, then doing an event with Lamborghini, or the Real Racers Never Quit, which is a Team Redline thing, which has all the race drivers in, or because you'd be streaming at the same time to an audience of people who want to see you do well, and you feel a pressure as a driver to do that. I came away feeling just fatigued, I'd been sort of used and thrown away by a lot of these manufacturers and a lot of these race series. It took a long time. It took about a year to get over that amount of just just disenchantment with sim racing.
This burnout was probably at its peak as the world was coming out of lockdown in 2021, but Jimmy did not go unrewarded for his efforts. In the middle of 2021, Jimmy got a call that he could have never expected from Praga. They wanted Jimmy to compete as a driver on a team in the 2021 Brit Car Endurance Championship.
That came out completely out of the blue, and again, I think thanks in part to my, popularity during lockdown, I got a call from the MD at the time, a guy called Mark Harrison. He calls me and goes, "Oh, Jimmy, we're thinking about doing this thing. It's called a guest driver program at Praga. And I genuinely thought it was going to be could you advertise it for us? And we'll pay you some money and you can do some stuff. I'm like, yeah, sure. And I was like, do you want to be one of the drivers? And I remember thinking to myself, like, what? I mean, I remember saying yes a lot on the phone. Yeah, you try and be all calm and collected and cool, but I wasn't at all in that moment. And I remember getting off the phone because I was on the in the car with a friend. He was driving up and I was sitting in the passenger seat, and he said to me like that sounded. What was that? I said, I think I'm going to be a racing driver next year. He was like, what? It didn't hit me until I was in the hotel the night before the test with the rest of the drivers. I really wish I kept the footage, but I didn't. I deleted it out of like shame, but I did a bit to my camera saying that like I am terrified. I don't think I should be here. I don't think I belong here. I think I should go. And I think I might just go and say I'm ill or something. I so nearly left. I'm really glad that I didn't, I'm really glad that I saw it through, because I got in the car and I was terrified when it started up. But the moment I started driving it around, I thought, this makes sense. I know what I'm doing. I can feel what the car is doing. There are some new sensations here. There are these G-forces that I'm not used to, and being able to feel what the brake is doing, and like having the car slide a bit on traction. These are things that I'm not entirely used to. I had my first slide coming out of the corner, and before I realised what was happening, I had corrected it. Just naturally, because of all the sim racing that I had done for many, many years. And I remember I came in, and after my first test, I think I was like 4 temps off my teammate, who was a champion from last year. And I was like, it's there. I just need to believe that I can do it.
And that belief, whether it be in real life racing, sim racing, YouTube, or life in general, it may have been the thing that Jimmy was missing all along.
But it takes a little while for you to understand like the aggression that comes in racing, because I just like tried to, in the first few races, like, oh, get out of the way, I don't want to get in anyone's way, And then towards the end of the season, it's like, right, I'm going to launch this guy, I'm going to send it on this guy, because they're all doing the same thing. And if you don't drive like that, if you don't drive with that aggression, then you just get eaten up. And that happened to me in the first few races, because I was just like, frankly, scared. It's like everything in life, it just comes with time. It's why everyone always says to you in racing, like, what is the way to get quicker in a real race car? It's just to drive the car. It's get seat time. As time sort of went on throughout the first season, although like the results don't really reflect it, I was getting quicker and quicker. I was lapping consistently faster than my teammate at the time, which was an amazing achievement for me. One that I really took very seriously. And all that experience in sim racing that I'd had, in iRacing, driving prototypes, you start to like unlock these little bits of information that they're always there. They're just dormant, and they just require you to like experience the car more and have confidence in the car to be able to then execute those things in real life.
Throughout the season, Jimmy navigated his way through a field of professional and amateur drivers, but even with that, Jimmy had by far the least amount of seat time out of all of them. He was also most definitely the only one to have not set foot in a race car until into his 20s. But this didn't deter Jimmy from learning and getting faster. But as the season went on, Jimmy could not escape his middling results until there was only 1 week left in the season at Donington.
I was being partnered in that race, and that meeting by Gordy Much, who was also my driver coach. And I hadn't had a driver coach. I didn't have one until halfway through the season. It transformed everything. Gordy went through my footage. Like, he wasn't unfair to me, but he wasn't like, he didn't baby it. It's like, right, you're losing a lot of time here because you're just like lifting the throttle for no reason. Why are you doing that? I'm like, oh, I'm just a bit scared. It's like, well, don't be, because I can do it, so you can do it. It's like, oh, okay, and it sounds like tough love, but you sort of need that in a race car, because no one's going to pat you on the back and tell you it's all right. You got to just go and deliver. But having Gordy that weekend, it transformed everything, because I had that coaching for the entire weekend, for every session. And I think, we were fastest in practice, which I was like astonished by. And then we qualified, I think, P2 in the Pragas, and then I had to I started the first race and I had to avoid this massive crash at T1 and managed to do so.
And just like that, in what was supposed to be Jimmy's most successful weekend to date, now he had to drive from the back.
Managed to go, I think it was from something like 18th to 6th in my stint. And I thought to myself but we're so far behind. Maybe the win won't come this time. And then Gordy got in the car and just drove the wheels off it. And I will always remember standing over the pit wall and watching our car come around the last corner and just emotion took over, It sounds so cliche to say it, but it's all these years of fantasizing about being a racing driver and it just not being possible, so much so you just put it out of your brain. And then to find myself about to win a brick car race in a prototype and knowing that what my efforts online had got me there, it was just this massive relief, It was relief and validation. My fantasy ever since I was a kid was basically I'm not quite sure what this says about my background so much, but it was to stand on a podium in front of my friends and family, lift the trophy and have them cheer for me, That for some reason that really meant a lot for me for that to happen. And then it happened, and I kept, because we didn't just win one race, we won both races in that meet. I remember I kept the trophies on my desk behind me for months afterwards, because I just got up every day, looked at them and smiled, and at that point it was the best moment I'd ever experienced. Everything that I had was that moment there, and it was okay, cool, that's chapter 1 now. Chapter 2, I guess.
What if the sim racing shed dweller, who, by the way, had relocated to a bit roomier of a situation earlier in the year, what if he was meant to be a champion? To do that, he would have to win the 2022 Praga Cup, which is the same field as Britcar, just under a different name.
I wasn't the rookie anymore, and people was seeing that there was some pace there. With it came a pressure as well, because I knew that me and Gordy were quick together as a pairing, because towards the end of the season, definitely, I think I was the quickest amateur driver and he was the quickest pro driver.
And once again, maybe the pressure and expectations began to weigh too heavily on Jimmy, who only came into this wanting to have fun. It started turning into something a lot more intense, especially after the first 4 races, where they finished only 4th, 9th, 2nd, and then a disqualified win. They were behind on the season before it had really even started. And to add insult to injury, Jimmy learned that these final races of the season were going to be his last in a Praga car.
Well, initially Praga had said they wanted to do a 3rd year. I was cool, okay, nice. And then I found out quite close to the end of the season that wasn't actually going to happen, and this was it. The stress I put on myself, the pressure I put on myself to perform was so great. So much so that I almost didn't like it anymore. I almost didn't like driving. I thought about I'm not going to do any more after the season.
But in an incredible turn of events, Jimmy and Gordy would go on to win 2 of the next 4 races over the 2 following weekends, putting them in a position to win the championship if they were to run a perfect weekend in the final weekend at Donington.
The week leading up to the championship decider at Donington, I didn't eat properly, I wasn't sleeping properly. I was so stressed.
But even with the added pressure and the mental toll that came with it, Jimmy performed in that final weekend. And it just so happened with how the race played out, that with less than 10 minutes to go, Jimmy Broadbent found himself in the lead. And if he could take the race win, he would take the championship in the first race of the weekend. But this win wasn't going to come easy. As the minutes ticked down, a hard-charging second place made their way all the way to Jimmy's bumper. But with Jimmy putting up a masterful defense, it all came down to the final lap.
Morton is right with him. The 87 and the 85, the 2 Praga factory entries. Through the Fogarty S's for the last time. Down towards the right-hander. At the Melbourne Loop. Broadbent's gone wide. Morton has a look and he won't get close enough there. Got to turn it back. Has he lost his chance? Yeah, he's run wide on the exit. I think that may have cost him his chance. I don't think he's going to get close enough. We're going to see them as they come out of the final corner. He can't quite get close enough. Jimmy Broadbent and Gordy Much take their 4th win of the season.
When it came and we won the championship, it was something that I just never imagined could happen. Again, another step of oh, we won a race, that's amazing. We'll never win a championship. Oh shit, we've won a championship with a race to spare. Now what? It can't get any better than this. But in that season, I think I really grew as a driver, because I wasn't just doing that, I was doing time attack alongside that in my little red MX-5, and that really taught me a lot about oversteer and understeer and controlling a car on the limit, because Pragas aren't cars that like being on the limits. You either go over it and spin, or you're under it and not at the right pace. The more seat time I had, I just felt the quicker I was getting. So yeah, a good year, but a very, very hard year to balance with YouTube and life, definitely.
Because that's right. During all of this, Jimmy was still a YouTuber. He was still posting out all of the content that his subscribers loved, and with the boom of COVID, his views continued to grow during this time period. And he was ready to return back to his roots and leave real racing behind.
Yeah, I just figured that was it for my racing. I just focused on doing my own stuff in time attack and just trying to get that paid for through sponsorship, and it made me really think about the opportunities that I was having, winning a race, then winning a championship, and everyone being like, "Oh, what's next, Jimmy? What's the next big thing you're going to do? How are you going to top this?" I'm like, do I need to top it? Does it always need to be this thing where I have to always keep reaching and trying to do something else? And then, because eventually that is going to just lead in disappointment, because there's only so high a ceiling that people can reach, If you think like that, then you're never ever going to get to enjoy anything. And that's something that I didn't do very well in 21-22.
But just as everything was seeming to reach its natural conclusion, Jimmy got another opportunity in 2023. And this time, he was going to fully embrace number 2 on his whiteboard.
Must have been sort of September 2022. I got a phone call from Misha, who literally just said, "Do you want to race at the Nürburgring next year?" And again, similar to that phone call with Mark, I was like, "Yep, what we got to do? What needs to happen here?" And that, of course, was the first call with Bilstein racing at the Nürburgring. I mean, the Nürburgring was a big part of my channel for a long time. I knew it very well from a lot of sim stuff, and again, racing there is another personal highlight for sure. But I never ever thought in my wildest dreams that I'd race there, let alone compete in the 24, which we did this year. Well, I said 24. It's the 7, I think is more accurate. To be on that starting list and be part of all that is it's wild, and it's always really important, I think, to live in that moment and just enjoy it whilst it's happening.
Because Jimmy Broadbent's story is far from over, even if he were to never step foot in a race car ever again. Because there will always be someone whose days are brightened by Jimmy Broadbent's videos and content, whether it be past, present, or into the future. I want to highlight a very special event that Jimmy is putting on November 9th through 10th, and that is the Race for Mental Health 6th. Take it away, Jimmy.
Of course. So this year is our 6th running of the Race for Mental Health. I can't believe it's gone by that quickly, 6 years of doing that. And it's a very important event that we've been putting on every year now to benefit the charity Mind. Mind's a mental health charity. It provides support for those who are experiencing their own mental health crises or having problems, having nowhere to turn to. They exist purely to help you in those moments. It's a service that I've used back when I was really struggling. Back when I was, hurting myself on the verge of doing more serious things, there were people from Mind who would help me, direct me to the right places in that moment, or help me think a bit differently in that moment, and sort of walk me back a little bit from the figurative edge that I found myself at. So, so far we've raised, it's just shy of £300,000. It's like $500,000, something like that, for Mind. And It's the most important event that I do. Everything else that I do, the racing, YouTube, whatever, doesn't matter. This is the thing that actually makes a difference. So I will actively shill it as much as I can. Don't care. It's worth it for this race. So if you're around for that, then drop by the stream. If you can donate, amazing. If you can't, share the stream to someone else. Maybe they can, and maybe we can break that 300k this year.